jump to one specific right now, which is accuracy, number 13, because it shows up so early on in your interactions with customers, with clients, with prospects, really. And as a lead into this, I'm going to point out to you the correct spelling of my name. So look at the bottom of the slide in turquoise. My last name is Labalme. But it is so often misspelled, it's staggering. In fact, it's more often misspelled than spelled correctly. So here are some of the messages I've gotten from people in your industry. Health insurance for Victoria Labalme. We have a program I was doing on communication marketing by Victoria Labalme. Here's another email I got, or actually a letter to my old office, Victoria Luborn. Another one here, we have from a financial group, I've covered the name to protect the guilty, Victoria Laborms. I am one letter away from worms. This got to be such a problem that I made a poster that we hung in my office of all the misspellings. And I'm sure if any of you here has a name that's so often misspelled, you know what that feels like. The challenge is, though, the moment someone misspells my name, if they're a financial advisor, I think, what else are they missing? What other mistakes are they making? What kind of keystrokes are off when it comes to critical financial information? And how much do they care if they don't go out of their way to simply ask, tell me the correct spelling of your name? Because once it gets into the database, it's a problem. And if someone has a name that, like Kelly, that's Kellie, or is it Kelly? If someone you meet is Mark, or they're telling you about a sibling named Mark, is it Marc or Mark? My name is Victoria. I cannot tell you how many people call me Virginia, Vanessa, Valerie, Veronica. They know it's a V name, they just don't remember. So now I say I'm Victoria like The Secret. They remember that. But I'm Victoria. I'm not Vicky, and I'm not Vic. And if I meet someone and the first time I meet them, they say, hey, Vicky, I don't like it. It's like if your name is Richard and I decide to call you Dickie. Not the same. Victoria, Vicky. So you want to be mindful of those elements. My financial advisor has never called my name wrong. He's never had a typo. So that front office staff, whoever adds those names, you have an opportunity when it's a complicated name. If it's a complicated name, that's your opportunity to shine. Because people know their name and they'll go, wow, they got it right. No one gets it right. So think about accuracy. It's more important than one would imagine. The last type, which is the most rare, but which one done wins the sale, is what I call absorbing, considering, and responding. And that's when someone's talking, and even though questions, comments, ideas, concerns are raised in your head, you resist temptation. And what will happen often is that person will take a turn, and they will reveal something they would not have otherwise. It could be that they just are meeting with a competitor. It could be that they have extra budget. It could be that they're actually switching jobs, but they're not sure if they want to tell you. And what happens is when they pause, sales professionals so often jump in with the next question because they're afraid of the silence. The pause is where you win the deal, because the pause is when they're deciding, do I say this or not? The pause is when, if you're looking at their eyes will go up and to the left and the right, and they're thinking, either trying to remember something, like what was the name of that, or what is that person, or the department, or how are we handling that, and they're pausing, or they're debating whether to trust you. Should I reveal? And so often, as I said, sales professionals are nervous, and they jump in, and they blow the pregnant pause. So you want to wait until the person comes back with their eyes to you. This is what acting's all about. It's about looking in people's eyes. It's about connecting. So we're going to try a little bit of the first two, the interrupting and the pouncing, because you'll see how comical it is, because we're doing it for fun. But I can guarantee you, when you interrupt someone or pounce on them, nobody's laughing.
When I teach Rock the Room, which is one of my programs, and when I teach Risk Forward, which is this other that we're talking about today, they both come from the same initial source, which is we must reconnect with our through line. And that is that driving force behind why we're even communicating. And so if you think of it almost like an inner current, like the river of a current, the current of a river rather, what is driving you to do what you're doing? And so when you're at, let's say, a financial advisor and you're meeting with clients or prospects, you could either look specifically at the transactional element at hand, which is, oh, I want to close the sale, or you can look at it from a more holistic perspective. And to be a really brilliant communicator, your words there, you want to look at it more from a holistic perspective initially, because the client can always smell it. Oh, they're just trying to close me. But if your intention, your through line is pure and you're there to really help them, to really serve them, to really partner with them, you're choosing a verb, whether it's serve, help, partner, that's in service of them and the higher vision behind it all, your communication value will go way up. Well, it's interesting. In communication skills, people often think of speaking as the most important. They say, oh, I have to be a better communicator, therefore I have to be a better speaker. There are three main categories to communicating. One is obviously how you speak, one is how you write, and one is how you listen. And those are the three general ones. And when you interview people and do polls about what it takes to be successful in business, listening is always in the top three, and yet no one ever teaches it. So one of the things that I teach is the importance of listening skills. And sometimes I'll survey an audience when I'm doing a big keynote, and I'll say, who here by a show of hands has ever taken a listening skills workshop? Because they've learned speaking, and literally, and I've done this around the world with hundreds of different audiences, and on average, 3% will raise their hand. And I go, how is that possible that listening is one of the top three skills and only a tiny percentage of this room has ever really studied it? We take it for granted, but we screw it up. One of the things that we do in the arts, of course, is we study our work, and it's painful. You just have to know, everyone, the first time through, it's painful. I remember the first performance I ever watched of myself. I was literally under the chair. Like, I slid down off the chair because I thought it was so brilliant. And then when I watched it, I slowly slid. I remember this. I was with my parents. I think I was 17, and I was underneath the chair like this. So you just have to get over the cringe factor. So you watch it once just to get through the cringes. And then the second time, you just look at it objectively. And it's invaluable. To be able to observe yourself and to recognize what you might not have witnessed in your body at that time. Like, did I really say the word right 50 times in the last 3 minutes? Right. I once, when I was performing, I had a manager in Hollywood who said to me, you touch your hair a lot on stage. And I was like, I do not. I don't touch my hair on stage. And sure enough, I went back through the video, and my editor actually did this. He took all this footage from the last few months and he cut it together. And I was like this and you realize these things. So it's incredibly valuable because our objective sense of ourselves is not always accurate until we actually see it. It's really smart. One is, how do you not preempt or prepave conversations that aren't really meant to be happening? How do you not direct it in a way that's actually not effective? So how do you not ask these questions that you think the person has in their mind when they don't? Number one. So how do you stay truly present, which, going back to acting, is what we do. People have this misconception that acting's a performance and fake. But great acting, and we all know this from the great movies and great plays, is you feel like it's real. And to make it feel real requires total presence in any moment. So you're not saying lines, but you're actually speaking truth at that moment on cue. So that's the first thing, is not to control and manage the conversation in the wrong way, but to really let the client be there organically in their own interests. And number two is, if someone doesn't want to listen to themselves, it's like, well, fine, but you're only going to get better. We used to, as an exercise for acting, we would have to go to a cafe, which right now, as this is being recorded, is not as easy because we're in the pandemic. But we would practice with our scene partner. In this case, you would bring someone. And if it was an organic conversation, the people near us wouldn't look over. because it would just feel organically to them like an authentic conversation interaction. If you started to act and be like, so tell me, Bill, what would be your... People organically nearby feel like, well, that's weird over there. What are they talking about at the next table? So that was literally the litmus test at that time. But it's really a matter of more practice. Back to the listening to the recording of oneself. One thing that we used to do to listen to the recordings of ourselves is do it while we were doing the dishes, folding laundry, walking, traveling on the pre-core, exercise, elliptical, because then you're not sitting there cringing as much, you're just doing your other activity. The same goes for this. How do you practice your lines while you're doing the dishes, while you're walking, while you're at the exercise machine? So you just get used to them so they feel familiar. People often want to have some guarantee of outcome. And the only way you're going to succeed is by heading into the unknown, which, by the way, is that subtitle, Embrace the Unknown and Unlock Your Hidden Genius. And people ask me all the time, how did I get to where I am in my life? I went through the performing arts. I started working with financial advisors, consultants, executives, entrepreneurs, artists, helping them express themselves and try new things and go forward even when they have some fear. And that's the case of an actor. You're never guaranteed, but we're never guaranteed in life. It's the same thing as asking someone for a date or talking to a new client or trying a new part of your business. It's always a little bit scary. But that piece that we have this imaginary thought that everyone else is not scared, everyone else has it together. And when you recognize that pretty much everyone is scared at some point, it takes the onus off you from feeling like, oh, I must be wrong because I'm scared. If you go, oh, fear is part of it, that's just normal, to move through that. And not in some kind of Navy SEAL bust through the wall, because I don't think that's really always a valuable approach for all of us. But it's how do we go forward? And this is the theme of Risk Forward, is this position. It was born from this physical pose that I learned when I was studying movement, is how can we be heart open, even if we're a little off balance, to go forward, to be pulled forward and head into that unknown. And every time you put yourself forward, it's a little bit fearful. But what's your choice? Not to do it and regret that? The things that we're always taught in business or in entrepreneurship is, just take any action, just start. And there's value there to get in motion, but sometimes there's a story I tell in the book where I was taking an improv class and I thought, to be a good improviser, you just should show up and, jump into the scene and start talking and expressing yourself physically. And the problem with that, as my teacher taught me, is I wasn't really watching the scene before I just jumped in and started participating. And financial advisors and business people do that all the time. They aren't really reading the room. They're not really listening. They're not in tune with their EQ, their emotional quotient, IQ, EQ, to look and understand what is the dynamic at play here. So just jumping into the scene or jumping into the conversation isn't always the right move. And so that particular chapter on action is incredibly valuable. There's another chapter in there on indecision and how it's so important to pay attention. And I won't reveal the secrets there, but how indecision has wisdom in it, because what's really going on below the surface. As I went around the world as a keynote speaker like you, and doing workshops mostly on communication skills, using principles from the performing arts to help people with their performance in business and life. And I was teaching this program, Rock the Room, and doing all types of experiences around the through line, what I mentioned earlier. I noticed that there was a lot of talent and genius, really, that was being left to the side for the reason that people felt like they didn't know the end of the path. They were like, well, I don't know what the goal is, or I'm not clear on how it's going to unfold, or I'm not yet in a place where I can articulate the full coordinated vision. I just have inklings. And I said, that's actually how most people create brilliant careers. Sometimes you would get a flash, but I would watch leaders at companies at insurance advisories, places with people that had, brilliance in them, as administrative assistants or entrepreneurs or the medical industry. And I would hear these leaders say these phrases that they thought were helpful, but they were actually harming the talent in their organization or their people. And I thought there's something underneath here that needs to be addressed, which is the idea that not everyone needs to know exactly where they're going to create brilliance. And that's the idea behind the book, is that it's really about heading forward, even if you don't have the whole plan figured out, and risking forward and figuring it out as you go. And that's what led me to write it, to take all the talent that people had and give them the permission to create, to go forward, and to unlock what's inside of them.